So what creates a map? Three things create a map: deletion, generalization, and distortion. Okay, so deletion, if I think about the territory and I'm working on creating a map, I'm going to look at that territory and I'm going to say, what is useful for this map? I only want the stuff that's useful in this map, and I want to delete out all of the other stuff that is not. So if I'm creating a map because I want to get from point A to point B, which is in a sense, we're all doing, right? You're here on this call right now because you want something. You are where you are right now, but you want something else, or you want to be somewhere else, or you want to feel differently. So you want something. That's why you're here. So if we were creating a map of how to get from here to wherever it is you want to be, then I can look at reality and say, okay, or the territory, and say, what is not really useful here and what is? And I'm going to delete out everything that is not useful. So if I was creating that map and I said, okay, for me to get from Santa Cruz, where I live, to Los Angeles on that map, do I need to draw the trees in there? No, the trees aren't going to help me get there. All right, I can leave the trees out. That's an example of what I mean by deletion. And you're living your everyday life, you're deleting out a lot of information because you have decided it's not necessary. And deleting information, that helps us to focus. You know, like if I'm here working at my desk and there's somebody is having their lawn manicured and I hear the blowers and the machines and all that, well, I can delete that out because it's not useful to me while I'm working here. Happens a lot. So I'm deleting that information out, and we do that all the time. Like we just are not really paying attention to many sounds in the room. And then if you get quiet and you listen for them, then you bring them back in. But a lot of times that's not useful for us. So that would be an example of deleting information. And then we could do this to a fault, though. We can delete out important information. And because a lot of this is on autopilot, sometimes we have to go back and question, what have we deleted? What information am I not accessing anymore? That would be useful to me now. And the next one is generalization. So deletion, generalization. What is generalization? It's when I take information I've already learned and I apply it to something new. For example, let's say I play the piano, but I don't play the guitar. I probably will be able to learn the guitar faster than someone who didn't play any musical instrument. Why? Because I can take everything that I've learned that I know about the piano and apply it to the guitar, and there's a lot of it that's going to cross over. And we can do this in things that are very, very different. We can take situations. We walk into a situation, we see similarities, and we say, oh, I think this is kind of like this, and then you generalize that over. Now, the downside to this is we can overgeneralize. And so we're not really living in the present, or we're not really meeting people based on who they are. We make all these assumptions about them. And this is also where prejudice and racism and those sort of things come into play as well. Overgeneralization. So if a white guy with short hair wearing a suit swindled me out of $100,000, and the next time I meet somebody who is white, male, short hair, wearing a suit, if I automatically think, well, this person must be trying to screw me over, which is probably not true, that would be a case of overgeneralizing. So generalizing is very helpful in understanding new things by taking what I've already learned and applying that to something new. Then I learn it faster, or I size up situations and people faster. But this can also be taken overboard, and then would limit me. And then distortion is like when I travel, which I do a lot of. I really love traveling. And let's say I'm going to a country that I've never been to before. Well, I can plan this out and sort this out, imagine what that's going to be like, which could help me prepare for going there. So I don't have to have gone there yet. I can future pace it. I can create the future in my mind. And distortion is also where we get creativity, where they say, think outside the box. That would be a form of distorting. Because until this point, I have not known this in by my reality, but I can imagine something different than all that I've experienced. Now, this is super helpful when it comes to planning ahead, forethought, being creative, coming up with creative solutions. But we can take this overboard as well, as in, I can be afraid of things that have not happened and are not likely to happen. But if I distort too much, then my reality can be these things are actually quite real and something that prevents me from doing things that I want to do. For example, I see a plane crash on the news, and then I have a trip coming up, and I think about, well, what if the plane crashes? And I imagine this in my mind to the point that I freak myself out and I decide to cancel my flight and not go on the trip. Now I've just limited myself because I've taken something that's not real, but have scared myself into not doing it anymore. So what we do in NLP, and we have a variety of ways of doing this, is we challenge our limitations, not as much in ourselves, but in our map of reality, which makes it a lot easier to do. And what that requires is that we first become aware of our map of reality. How do we do that? Well, in a previous live where we worked on limitations, I had you think of something you wanted and then ask yourself what stops you. That's a real good way to find your limitations very quickly in your map of reality, not in who you are. So when we think I can't, this is what we call a modal operator. I can't do something. Right away, you know that you found a limitation in your map. When we speak in absolutes, as in things are always this way, men are always like that, or women are always like that, or it's never like this, or it's never like that. When we speak in absolutes, again, we're bumping up against one of our limitations, one of our boundaries in our map of reality. And then when we take it even further and we start doing identity work, who you believe you are has limitations set on that. And this is how we distinguish ourselves as who we are versus someone else, or who we are separate from our environment. And sometimes those limitations are good. Those boundaries can be good for protection, for carving out our place in the world, but then they can also limit us from growing and moving forward and advancing. So we find out, well, what do we believe about ourselves? Do I believe I am what I value? Maybe I believe the opposite, which is very negative and very limiting and causes suffering. Or maybe I'm somewhere in between, which will still cause limitations and suffering. But when I believe I am what I value, well, that's a enriched map of reality. And this is why I focus so much on identity and self-concept work, because that's really ground zero of your map of reality, who you believe you are. So we want to enrich our maps. When we feel limited, what do we want to do? We want to create more choice, because chances are if you feel limited, you feel like you're only, well, some people say, I have no choice. We say that a lot, right? You always have choice. It may not be the choices you always want, but we always have choices. So we want to make sure that we always have choice built into our maps. Resources. We say in NLP, we have all the resources we could possibly need to do anything that we desire. Internal resources. You were born with them. They don't go away. You can cultivate them. They're there. Those are things like perseverance, creativity, determination, humor, playfulness. There are many, many resources. So often what's missing in our maps are resources. We think that we don't have them, and we go in search of them outside of ourselves. You ever tried to search for something, and you kind of went crazy searching for it and searching for it and searching for it, only to find out it was in your hand the whole time? I know we feel really dumb when we do that. It happens, right? And that's what it's like when we go searching externally for resources. They're already inside of you. And then the third thing is inaccuracies. Now, there's no such thing as a 100% accurate map. Like I said, if there were, then you'd just be recreating the territory and you would take away the usefulness of the map itself. However, it needs to be accurate enough. It needs to be accurate enough that you can function in reality and with people well enough to make your life work, to get the things that you want. Meaning there's certain things that we accept in reality that are true. Like day and night and the sky and the ground, and things like that. But of course, it goes deeper than that. Like if you're the only one in the room who thinks you're the smartest and everyone else thinks you're the dumbest, there's probably an inaccuracy in your map of reality that needs to be updated.